Jason, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Felipe, and thanks everybody for having me. So let me get my screen up here. Let's see. Okay, can you see my intro slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Good,
Yes.
okay. Okay, just making sure I get my notes section up here too. All right. Okay, so again, Jason Geslois, thank you again for everybody, and Andrea for having me. I'm going to talk about today artificial intelligence with R and R Studio and in Positron. So I'll go over a little bit about that. And so in today's presentations, we go over different ways that we can use AI in our public health workflows, and more specifically, kind of in our data analysis workflows within the software that we already may use, like RStudio and Positron. And so some of you may not be familiar with those, and I'll go into a little bit about that and some of the Posit products and how they work. And then, but for those that are, we'll go over just some of the examples how we incorporate it. And so. Um, and you're most of us are already in the group to know that how AI and chat box work in the traditional format. You go to the site, you enter a prompt in the console, and then the AI generates responses. But what if we can work with it closer to our actual work? And so that's what I'm going to go show off today in things like packages like Elmer and extensions like Windsurf, and give a little bit of intro from Positron Assistant as well. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So why is being closer to our workflow potentially more helpful in public health? As you know, many of the type of analysis that we do already can be supported and enhanced by using AI for things like descriptive statistics, mapping, looking at trends. The parentheses, for example, are just some of the things that we might look at in public health. But as I already alluded to, having the AI closer to our work can provide a few benefits that we'll talk about shortly. And, I want to clarify, I'm not talking about bringing or loading like personally identifiable information or data into the AI chatbot. What I mean is simply the process of using AI within the software that we would use to do these types of data analysis, like RStudio and Positron. So so those types of analysis, activities I kind of mentioned, I showed on the previous slide. Public health, we would do some of these things in programs like RStudio, or for those that may be familiar with SAS, or one of the other Sudan, SSPS, that kind of thing. But RStudio, it's a integrated development environment, or what they call IDE, and it's made by Posit, and it uses our programming language that's coding that we process and do the actual analysis with. And so again, for those not familiar, it's similar to like SAS or Python. You execute it in the software. The data analysis, it helps with things like reproducibility. And on this slide is just an example of what some R code looks like. And so, we're doing a few things here simply to demonstrate, like you can do addition, storing a list of words, making a function. And so I'm not going to go into specifics about how to code in R and things like that, but just to give you an example for those that are not familiar and what we might be looking for, when we actually are doing the work. And so, we're looking at numbers, we're processing different data sets and things. And so we do the code like this to make it reproducible and for a lot of the complexities that we work with in public health. So again, this is what RStudio looks like from the layout. You can change the screen, change the settings for the colorations and things like the dark mode. Um, it's capable of a lot of things, and you can do some pretty good stuff with it. And so before I show you like how we'll bring AI into it, to give you one example, so this presentation that you see today was created in RStudio, and so right alongside the code that I used to actually make the information that you're seeing here now, and so it was done in a Corto document, and so that's kind of like what I'm alluding to, is that really the power behind using the tools like this, that you can do a lot of things more than just traditionally coding, or not putting numbers that some other softwares and things may not be able to do in a similar way. And so this presentation you actually see is a document produced within the R code, run it, process it, and actually displays today for you. And so that's what I mean by how we can incorporate AI in a similar fashion to be able to use some of those kind of powerful connections and things like that in your analysis and workflow. Okay, and so again, our group here is, today is we're talking about AI. That's what we work with and do. So I won't go a lot of traditional time on like the traditional chatbot formats, but of course you're already familiar with. Essentially what happens is you go to one of the providers. I have a few listed there. A box pops up. You type in a prompt, and you get some generated results from some of the providers that you see. And so Many of them, they're online. They're very large language models, very big providers, and then some of them are open source. So you can actually do it like on your desktop internally, local model specific, just run it on a laptop even. And so there's a few like that. And so it ranges from, again, knowing the scale and scope, and a few of these you can do this with all the tools I'm going to talk about in just a second. Um, and so kind of continuing about this topic. So, again, leaving our work, instead of doing it outside of those different providers, going back and forth, we're going to do it in our studio. And it's not going to only help us be able to stay more focused on the work we're doing, but can help, to do things like increase your speed in coding, increase maybe your knowledge gaps around AI, give yourself some extra capabilities in working through it. It can help us with things like reproducibility, because a lot of times when we want to code things or analysis, we do it so we can do it continually, because a lot of it's simply just updating numbers, or it might be updating every new year report and things like that. And so it helps build that into that workflow, to make it more complete packages and projects. So like in our studio, you can create project files, or what's called notebook files, or like our markdown files that can make PDFs, dashboards, or HTML view pages, or like I said, the core code document that's making the presentation here. And so that's a similar thing we're going to do with AI in terms of the processing, and be able to incorporate it inside those tools to improve the output that you can do within your work. And so now we've gotten to thumbs up background. It's on why it's good to use. I want to actually go into and talk about one of the packages that they have, Elmer, which is a newer package that Posits created. And it allows us to connect to several different AI providers right within your code, including the ability to set up for like local models using Olama, for those that have done that. I was actually hoping to have one of that example done, because I've had it before, but I wasn't able to get that in time for you guys today. But and so I'm not going to walk through like the API setup of it, because essentially it's like any other portal that you do with an API. You have a provider, one of your AI models, you get your API key, you load it in, and then you can indicate in the code and start running it. But once you're there, you begin it and go through some. And so these are just some of the chat providers that's built into the package. And so for today's, I'm going to actually go through and use Google Gemini as the example, but you can use each of these functions. When you plug in your API key and some of the arguments to work through, you can use those different models within the package there, and to test out and explore. And so this is an example of some of the code in our studio that would run the Elmer package. And so in this example here, we're using additional packages like Shiny and Tidyverse, and it'll output for the demonstration. And so you see in the function there in the center, it says the chat Google Gemini that we'll call and select the model that we want to use. And so this the function below that, the models Google Gemini, displays a list of all the available models within Google to be able to choose from. And so the default one that was used here will be the Gemini 2.0 Flash, which is for just average daily use. It's fairly easy to use. And below that, there are two other functions, the live console and the live browser. And so these two will allow you to interact with a chat interface in different ways. And so if you use the console one, you can enter prompts right there in our studio, actually in your console, in the console section of our studio. And then if you use the browser, it uses the Shiny app that'll make a pop-up chat window, which I'll show, and you can traditionally see like using any other chat app. And so we'll use the Gemini function and then assign it to a chat object as the environment to work from, like you would just any other object that you would assign in R. And so here, we're going to first use the live console function, which will allow us to input a prompt in the console to then get a result, actually display in the console as well. So in this one, you can see that in the purple there that I've typed out a prompt, which instructed the model to just make a scatter plot of the iris data set using R. And so after submitting that prompt, the model outputs results, and it generates its thought process along with some of the code that it creates right there in the console. And since I wasn't more specific in the prompt, it starts to examine the data set to get an idea of like what code to create for the plot when it makes its examples. And it's just kind of like takes its toll there, just like the AI would do, since we didn't really give it a whole lot of feedback. But from here, see, because we didn't tell it to use ggplot or anything like that, it started making some of just some generic plotting functions. But right here, you can take it, you can copy it in your R code in your file there and actually go make the plot. And so you're getting it generating right there in your console, output there from working with the AI model there. And so, but if we, continue just to scroll down to see some of the full output that it gives, actually lists a few different alternative, scatter plot examples. I don't have it shown here, but it did include a third option using ggplot. And so, again, that goes back to like specifying and being specific in your prompting about what you want, how you want that kind of thing. So, even without a lot of detail in the prompt, it gave us a few different examples of code that we can copy in to test out and use in our specific code projects that we'd be working on. And so that gives you like an idea of what, what kind of some of the capabilities are that it would, be able to allow us to do the package. And so next, using the live browser function, in that will actually give us a window that looks like, the traditional pop-up that we would see in terms of using a chat box. And so in the viewer pane, of our studio, it'll open up and, on the side pane there, you can open up just like a chat box and you enter your prompt. In this example, I asked about daisy-metric mapping in public health, term related like spatial terms, more specific around like land cover and population disaggregation. So like say you're working with mapping and working with different data sets or things like that. Asking about mapping, that type of thing, can it work with that code stuff? So many of us have to do maps for different things. And so there's just one example. It starts generating code, processing there in the viewer pane, and gives us some code. And it really gave a lot of code, so I can't include it all here in the slides, but I took sections of it, tested it, ran it to bring up to the next slide. And so again, so taking some of that it actually produced in the previous one, and I modified some of the promptings with a few different examples. And again, this one's not perfect because it was just really, I wanted to demonstrate the kind of the example of what it was doing. But here's a map produced, for some of those additional prompts, looking at, for running polygons over a state of Kansas is one example. So again, so we would need more prompting and more cleaning to things like that to actually like, use it to make it something meaningful, to make it read more accurate. But again, thinking about, when we work with the models and how they can be inaccurate and things like that, it kind of can help you train to go, one after the other to think about, okay, well, I need to make this improvement in this code or this improvement to that code in that section. And it can really be helpful and beneficial. So you can actually see it like on the fly there to actually see the output of like code of, maps and graphs and things right there in the product that you might not be able to do within, say, like open up ChatGPT's window or Claude's window and do it right in their console because they don't have it built in that same way manner. So, but in this way, it makes it pretty straightforward to be able to use and doing directly, again, what you might be doing in your specific analysis, again, assuming all the different approvals and IT restrictions and things like that. So, and then I want to mention that's a little bit of that Elmer package, and it gives you the features of using the chat window there and being able to generate results. And to the next one, I don't have a lot of details about this one, but I wanted to mention it because of the I think it's incredibly powerful ability of what it can do. Again, I ran out of time before I could actually do a thorough walkthrough of an example for you, but it's another package from Posit that lets you evaluate some of the responses to each of the LLM models that you have, and it'll help you do things like score and solve different prompts between the models for your own scoring rather than just like trusting the general ones that are provided by the model makers themselves. So like when you see the scoring, it's like, okay, we were this effective at doing this, that effective doing that, this task. You can do that in your own prompting within our studio, within your own prompts. And so I think this is like a really powerful package. I really haven't got to thoroughly like dig deep into it, but this is something I'm really kind of excited about to actually try myself, to some of the work we have. But they have some great examples that they show on the website that they give you the example of ones that can actually compare between examples of when you would output to be able to score your own prompts and how well it's doing. So I wanted to mention that as one important package that Posit's made with it. And so switching gears a second, I want to actually go to the next. So for those of you familiar with RStudio and know it well, and that's kind of been the workhorse of R that's made life so much easier with the coding of things that we do. And the new guy on the front is positron. and it's one of the latest tools that they have for us to be able to use. And it has some additional features that are useful for different things that you might want to do if you haven't already used it. And so it's also one of the products that they built into their Pro platform. And so in Kansas, we have that now. We just got it, and so we're pretty excited about it. It's also free to download as an individual on your individual machines to be able to do things at home. That's built specifically. They built it specifically for data science, and you can incorporate R and Python to be able to do both. Lets you view your data objects and things like distributions in the side panel. So you can see it's kind of laid out a little bit differently. It has extensions that are built in, so it looks like it works similar to how like a browser would, where you could add extensions in. And I'll go over one of the AI ones in just a second. But it's similar to how VS Code is structured. And it's fairly easy to work with. But now I'm currently using the free desktop product, being at home. But like I said, we just got it in Kansas, their Pro version, to be able to do some additional things with in the ecosystem. But it's a pretty powerful tool. So what I mean by the displaying differently is like you can see the variables distributions on the side there that when you load data objects in, typically when we would in R, you would actually see a breakdown similar to how like if you were to do the skimmer package. But it's built right in there in the console. So it makes it easier to work with data and things like that. And give you a better idea of like how you might want to adjust your prompts when you enter it within the package and code and things like that. So moving on, I want to demonstrate just one of the extensions that use AI for code completion. And so here's just a few different ones that are available in the list there that you can actually go look at. And so most of you are probably familiar or heard of GitHub Copilot and the working with the license and things like that. But there's several others that are in there as well. And I'm just going to do a brief demonstration of just one of them called Windsurf as an example, where you might do some code completion. They build some other like software development stuff too, but just in terms of like being able to work within the framework of here and how we would do it potentially in public health. And so I'm not going to walk through the install, but it's basically you do work a similar way of how you would do a plugin like you would for the browser. So you have a pane there, you can go find browser extensions, and that's what's great about Positron is you can actually go look and see what's available. Install extensions to add your capabilities to it that you might not have. Again, assuming if you're if you're at work using it for work and IT approvals and all those things, but you can incorporate it as an extension. And work right in your script file like you would normally code or write a prompt, etc. And so starting with there. So again, once you activate, create an account with them, set it up. So I have a prompt that I typed out in a blank R script, and I'm gonna use the Penguin data set, and I'm gonna ask it to create a scatter plot using ggplot. And so I have it selected, so I highlight it there. And you can see that there's a pop-up on the side that says use Control-I as the Windsurf command. And so then you press Control-I and it sends it to Windsurf. And again, there's like different options for selecting different LLM models. And so I'm currently using the free one that's set up there. They have a similar structure where like you set up and have credits and that type of thing. And again, they're mainly built for like a lot of other developer tools and things, but this was one I thought was a good example to be able to demonstrate. But after submission, it generates code in the script page and it shows some of its own inner command panel above it. And so you can see that you can accept it, reject it, or keep adjusting to it. And so since it generated the code there, we can accept it and then we'll run it to be able to see what it produces. And so the code's in there, it's selected, we accept it, and then it produces. And so then running it now, you can see that the plot in the viewer pane on the right hand at the bottom there, it makes a nice touch to be able to work there right in the display in Positron. And so so let's say so now we have the code. It's already added to our sheet, and it's made a nice display in the plot viewer. Similar to what RStudio would do. But let's see, we want to update it with a facet, but we can't remember the right way to add that into the code. Because a lot of times it's like you're working with ggplot code and it's like, what's that one little thing? How do we add that? And it's so many times you run into that little issue of one little piece. And so let's say we just want to add it. Okay, so what do we do? So I add that. If you can see right above it, it says I typed it out above the code. It says, how can I add a facet by island? Just above the code. Selected it, press Control-I, and then rerun it. And so it generates an update to that code to add in the facet wrap there so that it's actually added back in. And we add that back into the code to be able to run. So it's a facet wrap around the island. and be able to produce it at that point. And so from there, it makes the facet wrap code by island based on the new updated chart. And the nice thing about the plot viewer in Positron is you can see the previous chart we had there just a second ago. And it's again, you can do that with the arrows like in RStudio, but it just makes a nice little display so you can actually see the transition from one to the other, and you can actually click it and go back and view it back and forth there. But again, this is all happening right here in the R script inside of Positron, not having to leave out, go to the browser, copy and paste, come back, anything like that. And so that's what makes it great to be able to have that ability inside the tool. Again, and not having to worry about like formatting or, 'cause sometimes if it's certain HTML pages, when you copy, you have to like adjust the indentions and things like that. And so you don't have to worry about any of that with this, which is great. And so, again, I showed you Windsurf and its extensions, its own product and things like that. But the nice thing about that is built into Positron is it's a new called the Positron Assistant, and there's the web link there with some more information about it. It's just come out recent, and so they've got their own where it's incorporated with LLM providers like Anthropic and some other streamlining features that integrates pretty nicely into the software. And so I'm going to just give you one example, like again, continuing for what we did a second ago in the picture there. And again, since it's still experimental, you have to kind of activate it in the settings, and that's you go into the settings tool, type for it, click it, and so forth. And so they're working on getting it even more better and adding more providers and things like that. But it's a pretty cool feature. So after the setup page, you then go in and select the model to use. And so, they have Anthropic, GitHub Copilot, Gemini. And I wasn't able to get the Gemini to work on this example, but I was able to use the Anthropic. And you have to use your own API key to go through it. But once you do, you just plug it in and you're ready to go. And so, again, if you're doing this at work, you need an agency API key or connection through like one of the Posit Pro things like that to be able to use it in that way. But once it's set, it's ready to go. And it brings up, you restart, and it opens up on the side there with a chat window that you'd see like here. And so you'd basically you'd enter a prompt like we've done before, select the model you'd want to use. And so continuing with what, I showed earlier, that in the top part of the prompt area, it shows it's reading the file that I have open that we used for the charts that we just made. And so you can see in the top there that it went ahead and asked the new prompt in that window that I want it to read, asking it what other charts can be made from the data set that we have. And so then below it, it responds telling us that it read it, and it tells us it sees a scatter plot and a bar chart that's there, but then it adds several others into it for us and provides the additional code that you see, and that's on the next slide. And so it's in the panel there that you can see the actual code is produced in there. And so you can, take it, copy it, do all kinds of things with it now. And when you hover over that section in the control panel on the sidebar, you can see the code window. It has a couple different options. And so it's got insert it within your specific spot in your code, insert it into another file, a couple other different options. And so it's a pretty powerful thing to be able to work on right here when you get the code and it know it and recognize it to use it. And so having it all added in here, that's generated what it generated on the right here. And so I didn't type any of this out, and you can see where it says plot 1 and plot 2, it says in parentheses on the right there, it says your existing plot. So it recognized the two that were already currently in the R script that was there that it saw. And then it put the others below that based on the data to see what else could we generate to make different plot wise. And so, yeah, this is really great. This is kind of cool, to be able to watch and do this. And so now I went and ran all those. And in the plot viewer pane, it's got several that it ran through. It looks like violin plot, distribution chart, confusion matrix, and a few others. And there's, in the bottom, there is, again, the little scroll carousel that you can see all the different ones that you can click on that it generated through all the code that I just ran. And so again, like in public health, think about all the different code sets and things we work with. We have a lot of cleaning issues. It might not be as easy as working with, a default data set like this, but it's still nevertheless a really powerful tool to be able to at least give some different ideas to think about, hey, I know I need to visualize this for this report. What's a meaningful way that I can actually reach the people that I'm working with, the community. And so it can help you foster some different ideas of oh, wow, this is didn't think about displaying it this way, or I didn't think about how I can maybe doing this distribution different to show some other facet to our to what we're exploring. And so I think that's the really power behind it, is that you can actually see and illustrate the different uses of the ideas they can generate. Again, outside of our ability to do it within our code sets and all the different restrictions or things like that we might have to face. But and privacy restriction, all those things. But it's just the idea of the implications of having those additional insights and additional creativity ways that we may not see before. And so, like, you can see the different colors and the different selections that are pre-defaulted based on selections. And so, like, again, we could just go in and easily change some of those in the code, but it helps generate a lot of that for where you just go in and tweak it for what you need. Do you need your agency colors, that type of thing. So it's a pretty powerful feature in my mind of what it can do. So that's all I have for you today. I was actually running out of time to do more. I really wanted to do more for you guys, but that's all I was able to get done in the time frame I was able to do. But again, it's I wanted to demonstrate some of the cool features, being able to use AI right there in the IDEs themselves. I've always been a huge fan of R. I've used it for several years. And AI came out, I think it's just been a powerful addition to it. And so being able to connect the two, I think it's a really meaningful thing, especially for our work. Then we're continually asked to do more with less and things like that. And so, if you haven't already used it, like I said, for those that have it, it's a great tool. All the things from the ProPosit, like the Workbench Connect and Package Manager, like we've loved it so far. The ones we've started working in Kansas with, if you get a chance to use it for sure. And those that don't, you have the deposit, they make it free. Like I said, I'm doing this at home. Again, just to be able to play with and check out how cool some of this stuff is, to at least give you 8 ideas to think about through what some of the work that we do in our work to ultimately work to serve the better of public health. And so again, just want to thanks everybody for having me here. Thanks to Posit and Windsor for letting me do the examples here. And thanks to Andrea again. She's not here today, but and so just want to appreciate you guys, and I think I'm happy to share any questions or anything like that. And so yeah, flip back to you, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and then yeah, we can take it from there.
Thank you, Jason, for that great presentation. I am stopping the recording now.